Well, welcome to Sunday School for the new semester. And I think that a key verse that we need to keep remembering is from Ephesians chapter 6, starting with verse 10. Remember that it says, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, the authorities, the spiritual forces of evil, powers of darkness and the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms," what I call the RAPS, RAPS. And this is something that's been ongoing, of course, but we seem to be feeling it more and more these days with the political scene, as well as the cultural, social, spiritual realms. So we need to be very much in touch with what's going on. And that's what we want to do this semester. We want to peel back the layers. We want to look at what's going on. This is going to be a very heavy semester, but I think a very good one for us to go through and to learn from. Again, I will be accompanied by my colleagues, Kevin Johnson and Brad Lindsay. They will be contributing to a number of the lessons, and I appreciate them so much. They have added so much to what we are doing and given me a lot of help and a lot of ideas. And I'm sure that you are also very thankful for them. We have kind of subtitled this new semester Remnant 101, the Christian Survival Guide. And I do want to give credit to Kevin Johnson for the slide sequence that has this particular format. It's very good for what we're doing. So Remnant 101, and what we're going to do is first recap some of the isms that we dealt with last year because it gives us background. So we'll look at theism today, where we need to start from. If anyone has their mic open, if you could mute, and Ann, I've given you control over that too, please. Thank you. Okay, we're going to start off with theism to get a background, and then we're going to go back to nihilism because this gives us a sense of where so much of our culture is leading to. Again, a nihilistic view that there really is nothing. There really is no meaning except the meaning that you give it. And then the counter to nihilism was existentialism, both secular and Christian existentialism. We'll take a look at that because it'll remind us of where we have been and hopefully not where we're going again. And then we're going to take a look at postmodernism because that in many ways is where we are today, where secularism has taken over and meaning has come down to what you make of it. Your reality is the only reality that counts. And if it isn't real, that's no problem because it may be real to you. And that is a problem. And then we want to look at some things on a bigger picture, the state of the culture, the state of the church. We'll look again at the question, how did we get here, and explore the ins and outs of that. But we want to come up with this last part. During darkness, there is light. And as I said in my email to you, that even as the darkness comes upon us, through many different vehicles of society and culture and politics and spiritual missteps. When the darkness is greatest, the light of Christ is greater. So we have that to remember and to look forward to, and that's what we want to stress over and over and over again. This may be a way that Christ is going to grab our attention. A way that God is moving in our world, the whole world. And so we need to be attuned to that, and we need to be part of it. And then there's this verse from 2 Corinthians 4:8-10 that you see on your screen. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed, always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our bodies. And that's what we want to show to the world, the life of Jesus, the life of Christ. And could you get that, please? Thank you. Okay. The book that we will be using this semester is one that Kevin suggested, and it is quite eye-opening. Live Not by Lies by Rod Dreher. He's the senior editor in the conservative American Conservative magazine. Very, very powerful book, subtitled A Manual for Christian Dissidents. And there's a reason for that. Some of you have started reading it. But we will be starting this in February. So you have some time to order it, to read through it. It'll be helpful if you do read through it. You may want to just read chapter by chapter when we go through it, but it's good to get a background on that. Amazon review of the book has said this: Alexander Solzhenitsyn famously said that one of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming totalitarianism can't happen in their country. Many American Christians are making that mistake today, sleepwalking through the erosion of our freedoms. Live Not by Lies will wake them up and equip them for the long resistance. So we need to be woken up. We have a woke culture that is asleep to what's happening. We can't afford to be asleep as well in the dark. We need to wake up and bring the light of the dawn, the light of Christ to this world. So today we're going to look at some things that we looked at before last year. I just want to briefly go over theism and set the stage. Of course, this is based on the book by James Sire, The Universe Next Door. He comes up with 7 worldview questions, and we want to continue working with these all the way through. The first one especially: what is prime reality, the really real? Because we have lost that in our culture. What is the nature of external reality? What is a human being? Because we have many questions about that, especially with the many, many different gender alphabet soup of types. What happens to a person at death? There is a refutation of the spiritual, the biblical, and it's very interesting reading articles on this particular perspective from those who don't know what's going on. They're spiritually dead, and yet they try to deal with this. Number 5, why is it possible to know anything at all? This is something that is being attacked in many ways, and reality is being turned upside down. How do we know what is right and wrong, especially in a culture that now says that evil is good and good is evil? It's topsy-turvy, and we've got to right the world in this way. And then what is the meaning of history? Because it's being refuted. The 1619 Project is trying to rewrite history, and we've got to stop that. We've got to get back to looking at the evidence that we have. Too often, history is written by the winners, and the winners aren't always accurate in what actually occurred. We hear that in the news all the time now. For the last 4 years, we've heard history trying to be rewritten. So come to my iceberg again, and I want to remind you that the top part, the 10% of the iceberg, is what we see in a person, what we see in so much that's going on. This is the action. This is what we hear somebody say, or what we see them do, their outward actions. But below that, there is a lot going on. Their assumptions are at work. It's where we do our thinking, and that thinking is what moves us to the action. And so we see that in the realm of assumptions, below the action, we have values. This is where our beliefs lie, and as well ideas. We call these presuppositions. We all have presuppositions, and our presuppositions guide our actions, every single one of our actions. So as you think of the world today, especially the political realm, spiritual realm, what's going on, it's guided by a person's presupposition. So you've got to get down to that level. You've got to deal with it. And that's why we went into this specific chart of dealing with these particular presuppositions. We have values. Axiology and ethics are two key terms in regard to our values. We have beliefs, and there are metaphysical beliefs that are in the spiritual realm, ontological beliefs that have to do with our origins and our being. We have ideas, and this is the realm of epistemology. How do we know what we know? All of these refer to our presuppositions. So we have to look at our presuppositions, but we also have to look at what is coming at us from all the different writers and all the different speakers and movers and shakers today, because they're all acting upon certain presuppositions that are very, very different from ours. So again, to break this down with ideas, remember epistemology deals with these questions. What is truth? Truth is thrown to the wind today. Why is it possible to know anything at all? We've got to hold on to truth. Christ is truth. And we need to hold on to that and share that, because people need to know so that they will know how to get to the true truth. Beliefs. First of all, the division of metaphysics and then ontology. Metaphysics is, what is reality? How do we know reality? Ontology, what is a human being? What happens to a person at death? These are crucial questions, supernatural questions that we need to deal with in our own lives and also share with others. There are a lot of lost people in your own families who have turned away, and their presuppositions are very different. Values, axiology, ethics. Axiology deals with what is good. Ethics deals with how should we behave? How do we know right and wrong? How do we know what is evil? And remember, that's been turned upside down in many ways today. This is a quote from Peter Townsend, who's written some very good books on Islam, but I felt in his last blog, this was an important quote from him. He said, decades of deconstructionism, cultural relativism, and wishful thinking has brought us to the point where millions out there are convinced that reality is something that we simply make up as we go along. You probably do not need me to point out what strange and bitter fruit this is bearing. We are being subjected on a daily basis to the apocalyptic rantings of those who assure us, for more than 30 years running, that we have 12 months to save the planet. Biological realities are ignored in favor of an alphabet soup of identities and pronouns. In short, we are speeding towards the point of civilizational disintegration described in W.B. Yeats' prophetic poem, The Second Coming. Quote, things fall apart, the center cannot hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. Now that poem was written a long time ago. And I remember pondering it when I was taking English literature and realizing that it had a lot to say about the future. And we are here in that future. Things are falling apart. So where do we go? What do we do? Well, first we need to shore up our own basis. And that's why I chose to go back to theism and just remind us of where we are. And then I've got some very good discussion questions that I want to get to as we go along. So this will just be a brief overview. First, Christianity is very different from other religions, other non-monotheistic religions, because we believe in a God who is separate from his creation. He has created, we are part of that, every bit a part of it, and he is not that creation, but yet our God, our understanding of God has made himself manifest in our creation through through Jesus Christ. And so he came down, lived within our world, took part of it, and yet is outside of it. So we have a God, a unique God that is not the Islamic God um, or any other monotheistic God, though we do have in common, I believe, the same God as the Old Testament and the Jews from that time. Okay. So Christian theism. Theism was the dominant worldview in the Western world up to the end of the 17th century. And then there were a lot of different factors, and we're going to look at that with nihilism, existentialism, and then finally postmodernism. The means that most worldview questions were answered were by means of theistic presuppositions. That has changed tremendously. So we will be using this worldview, the theism, as our standard as we explore some of the other worldviews, and then the worldviews that are very predominant in our culture today. So we need to see how this fits in. So what does a Christian theist believe? Now, this is a theist. A person who believes in God is a theist, but I'm specifying now a Christian theist, not an Islamic theist or someone else who believes in a type of God, but the Christian theist. So we believe that that God is triune, he's personal, and the Bible expresses how he existed, that he existed. We do believe that he exists. He has revealed himself to us. He can be known. The universe was his creation. We are part of that universe. Human beings were his special creation. And so we have these particular things that we hold on to and trust as the basis of our faith. What does it teach? Well, there are 7 things that James Sire brings up, and I'm just going to briefly put them up. Number 1, and this goes with the different presuppositions that we were looking at, the different words that we brought up, with the sense of metaphysics and ontology and axiology and ethics and all that. So, number 1, God is infinite and personal. He's triune. He's transcendent and immanent, omniscient. He's sovereign and good. We need to hold on to that, especially at this time. And God is moving. We can trust what he's doing, even though we certainly don't know always what he is doing or why he is doing it. But he is on the move, I believe, in a very significant way. Number 2, God created the cosmos ex nihilo, out of nothing, to operate with a uniformity of cause and effect in an open system. In all my years of dealing with creation evolution, one of the things that I kept coming back to, and still, I kind of in the morning, as in my quiet time, I look at my biological systems, and I am amazed at how well they work, of all the intricacies. And it's the human body that keeps me coming back to this idea that we're not here from evolution. Evolution can never have developed the millions of organisms that are so intrinsically, uniquely created, and and when you look at all the systems that have to work together, there's no way that even if we had 4.6 billion years that they could have been put together. So that's my own bias, I know, but I look at God's creation even in my own body, and I can't help but praise him for being uniquely made. For we have a great God and a creative God. So number 2. Number 3, human beings are created in the image of God and thus possess personality, self-transcendence, intelligence, morality, gregariousness, and creativity. We are different from every other creature on this earth. We have been um, singled out by God for his purpose. And we need to remember that. We have a purpose in this world, and we want to fulfill that purpose. And we do that by focusing on Christ, by getting to know him better. So in this time of uncertainty, it would be very good for us to focus on knowing Christ better, getting closer to Christ. So do that day by day. And I think that other things will fall into place better. Number 4, human beings can know both the world around them and God himself because God has built into them the capacity to do so, and because he takes an active role in communicating with them. We can know reality in a way that others have abdicated that knowledge, have turned away from it, have turned it upside down. But because God has made things known in truth, then as we follow that, as we follow his footsteps, as we follow the roles of evidence and the logic of reality, we can find reality. And number 5, human beings were created good, but through the fall, the image of God became defaced, though not so ruined as not to be capable of restoration. Dead, yes, but restorable. Through the work of Christ, God redeemed humanity and began the process of restoring people to goodness, though any given person may choose to reject that redemption. And we know too many people who have rejected that, and we need to reach out to them. The process of restoration, remember, creation was good. The fall came and tore that out from us, separated us from the reality in many ways. The redemption of Christ is a way of restoring that to us, and that will lead it to glorification, to be one with Christ as much as possible. So these are the steps of the process of restoration, and that is what we are here for. Our purpose is to be restored to Christ and then to reach out to others to help them to be restored to Christ. And that is the focus of this whole semester, to understand what's going on so that we can reach out to others and restore them to the truth. Number 6, for each person, death is either the gate to life with God and his people or the gate to eternal separation from the only thing that will ultimately fulfill human aspirations. This is something that really gets me deeply. I started dealing with Islam about 20 years ago. And the reason that that brought me to that desire was that as I dealt with other cults, I realized that, the Mormons, 10 to 15 million, Jehovah's Witnesses, 10 to 15 million in the world. But Muslims at that time were well over 1 billion, now 1.6 billion by different census or different counts. 1.6 billion who are separated from the truth about God. They believe in a God, but that God is not the true God. And they do not know Christ. They reject Christ as the Son of God, as God himself. We need to reach out to this world. And there are many others who are not in Islam, of course, who have also been separated and need to be brought back. They need to be restored. So death is coming to them, and they will be eternally separated unless we or others reach out to them. And then 7, ethics is transcendent and is based on the character of God as good, holy, and loving. And as I said before, we see in this world now so much of a topsy-turvy condition that evil is said to be good and good is said to be evil. And the good that we do is looked upon as being wrong or evil or less productive. And we need to turn that around and set it right. And then we have this: Jesus Christ is the fullest embodiment of the good. That's why we need to focus on Christ. And remember, man is not the measure of morality, God is. But in this world of today, so much of the measurement of morality is based on what man thinks. He's turned away from God. And so it's hard to keep up with what is going on, but we need to hold on to the true truth, and that's God's truth. And then number 8, history is linear in a theistic viewpoint, a meaningful sequence of events leading to the fulfillment of God's purposes for humanity. More so than ever before, perhaps, we need to hold on to that idea of the purpose of God for humanity. It's restoration. And we need to draw closer to Christ so that we can be used by Christ to lead others to him so that we can be restored as a world in the midst of all this confusion. So James Sire says this: Christian theism is primarily dependent on his concept of God, for theism holds that everything stems from him. And that's a good conclusion of his particular viewpoint. This is also very interesting. I wonder if you know who said this. What comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. And he concludes in another place. It's by A.W. Tozer. Quote, the most portentous fact about any man is not what he at a given time may say or do, but what he in his deep heart conceives God to be like. So thinking back to the iceberg, actions and assumptions, presuppositions, what we may say or do is at the top, but what really counts is what makes up the 90% of us, our presuppositions. And if we believe God to be God, then we are in a good way. But many people do not have those same presuppositions. So what I want to do now is open this up to question and answer. I'm going to, these are the questions that I want to bring up. Given that over 70% of people in America say they believe in God, what are some of the factors that you feel have led to the rejection of theism and a turning toward the woke culture? Or this one. How do you think we have come to the point that belief about right and wrong have changed so greatly? It has. How did we get here? And then thirdly, what are some of the changes that you have seen in people you know, and what has led to that?